Before the first stones were dragged across Salisbury Plain to build Stonehenge, and even long before the Great Pyramid at Giza cast its shadow over Egypt, a sprawling metropolis was already thriving. It sits in the Karakum Desert of modern-day Turkmenistan. This is a brutal, unforgiving expanse of 350,000 square kilometers, where summer temperatures routinely hit 50 degrees Celsius. There are no rivers flowing here today, and virtually no rain. By modern logic of human settlement, a city simply cannot exist here. In 1972, a Soviet archaeologist named Viktor Sarianidi surveyed this barren landscape from the air. Peering down from his window, he noticed geometric shapes in the sand. They were too massive to be accidental and too perfectly angled to be natural rock formations. What he found beneath the rolling dunes took Sarianidi the next 40 years to fully uncover. This is Gonur Tepe. It spans 28 hectares of meticulously engineered mud brick architecture. The thick walls and right angles reveal a level of planning that requires complex engineering. Thousands of people lived their entire lives here. They built a dense, functioning urban center in a landscape that most would consider a dead wasteland. The structural capabilities of Gonur Tepe rival any famous ancient capital. The royal palace features defensive walls that stand 2 meters thick. Below the streets, builders laid down a precise network of drainage channels, planning the water flow before the foundations were even poured. And the people living behind those thick walls were incredibly wealthy. Excavators uncovered 3,000 graves across the site, filled with luxury goods that map out an intercontinental trade network reaching the world's major powers. Inside the tombs, archaeologists found caches of deep blue stone. This is lapis lazuli, imported directly from the high-altitude mines of Badakhshan in modern-day Afghanistan. The trade routes stretched even further west. They uncovered cylinder seals carrying specific iconography from Mesopotamia, the ancient region corresponding to modern-day Iraq, showing active economic exchange with early empires. Despite exchanging goods with every major early civilization, from the Indus Valley to the Middle East, nobody wrote down their name. There is zero mention of the people who built Gonur Tepe in any Egyptian scroll or Mesopotamian tablet or surviving ancient text. For 500 years, they operated a wealthy trade hub at the crossroads of human development. Yet they lived and died entirely outside the recorded narrative of human history. Adjacent to the royal palace sits a massive temple complex. At its center, excavators found a sacred fire altar. The thick layers of ash deposited around the base indicate that someone kept this fire burning day and night for hundreds of years. Inside the walls of that same temple, Sarianidi's team uncovered a series of large ceramic vessels. Their size and strategic placement make it clear they were used for ritual preparation rather than simple grain or water storage. Decades later, independent chemical residue analysis of the staining inside these pots yielded a highly specific result. The ceramics contained traces of 3 distinct plants: cannabis, ephedra, a shrub known for its stimulant properties, and poppy. This exact chemical profile represents a deliberate, engineered ritual recipe. It was a targeted botanical preparation used to bridge the mortal world with the divine. This ancient Sanskrit manuscript details the Rig Veda. These hymns and early Zoroastrian texts praise a sacred drink called soma. Scholars debated its recipe for centuries. The Gonur Tepe residue provides the first physical evidence, tangibly linking the archaeological record to the oldest written hymns. The ritual tradition born around that desert fire eventually evolved into the foundations of Hinduism, early monotheistic religions like Zoroastrianism, and the Sanskrit language tree. This means the religious and linguistic framework for over 1 billion living people has a verifiable physical origin point. It traces directly to a desert temple that remained invisible for 4 millennia. Around 1800 BCE, at the height of its wealth and complexity, the city began to die. The archaeological record shows no signs of violent conquest, fire, or sudden plague. Instead, the local rivers that fed their intricate drainage systems simply began to shift away. Without water, the oasis dried up. Families quietly packed their belongings and walked out of the city, leaving their massive palace to empty out. For a long time, historians had no idea where they went. Then, in 2018, a landmark paper published by geneticist David Reich at Harvard University mapped the ancient DNA of these specific inhabitants. This map visualizes the migration pathways discovered in that genetic data. The genomic signatures of the Gonur Tepe population suddenly appear in the ancient DNA of the Iranian plateau to the south, South Asia to the east, and the vast steppe cultures to the north. The linguistic evidence confirms the exact same pattern. The Proto-Indo-Iranian language dispersed from this specific region during this exact time period, carried by these exact people. The builders of the ghost city didn't die out in the desert. They migrated, intermingled, and became the genetic and cultural ancestors of modern populations across Eurasia. That Harvard study was published in one of the most prestigious scientific journals on the planet, confirming 40 years of grueling excavation, yet it received almost zero mainstream media coverage. Viktor Sarianidi spent his entire career pulling a civilization out of the earth that rivals the complexity of ancient Egypt. He argued for decades that they deserved a place in our history books, but he passed away in 2013, long before his claims were definitively proven by modern genetics. Today, his life's work sits quietly in the wind. It is a partially excavated footprint, slowly being reclaimed by the desert that originally buried it. A civilization that may have seeded the cultural frameworks of 1 billion people still sits quietly in the Karakum sand. It is an overlooked chapter of the human story, waiting for us to look.